leadership, like how I put logistics in that, logistics and leadership in the supply chain industry. I'm gonna start with Sarah. She's Vice President of Logistics at Bath and Body Works. And Sarah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good morning, everyone. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to the gentlemen in the room, women in logistics. it's always exciting to see the representation. So thank you. As you said, Vice President of Logistics.
You guys here?
Okay. Can you hear? Sorry.
We're good. Okay,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Holly.
All right. Vice President of Logistics for Bath and Body Works. So my career as of next month will be 25 years with the evolution of L Brands, limited logistics, all the changes. So I can say that I'm a 25-year veteran with the same, the same company paying my paycheck, but the business has evolved significantly. I feel like every 2 years I've had a different job, and most recently with the separation of Victoria's Secret, it was a healthy divorce, but it changed a lot. And so we are now a standalone organization of about 1,800 stores. Hopefully you're familiar with our product. We're in 40% of American homes. We've got another 400 plus stores internationally, and are close to an $8 billion organization. So my specific responsibilities are distribution centers for both our retail and fulfillment operations, as well as anything that moves. If it's an inbound, if it's an outbound, if it's going to your porch, going to our stores, the logistics of getting product where it needs to be.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's a busy day.
All right, Debbie, we're gonna move on to you, Director of Procurement, Distribution, and Logistics at Logic Source. And how about your background?
My background has been primarily in transportation and logistics. I've worked both on the service provider side of the business as well as the customer side of the business, so to speak. In my role today at Logic Source, I'm a procurement consultant. Throughout my career, I have been procuring distribution and logistics along the way, and this is kind of pulling all of that experience together and offering it up to one of our key clients here in town. I'm on a dedicated client team. Before that, I spent probably 20 years in retail logistics, working for a number of different retailers in the big box format, specialty format, one of which was Ascena Retail right here in town, and managing global logistics there. So basically anything that moves, if it's coming from Asia or going to Asia, or moving around the country to our various stores and distribution centers and things like that. So early in my career, I started in the service side of the business in a couple of real lady deserts, like trucking and steamship. So and in those days it would not be uncommon to go to a meeting where there were 300 people and there would be 5 women. So right, and we've improved a little bit from there today, but not a ton. So anyway, but that's pretty much it.
Well, thank you. All right, I know you sent me yours, but why don't you go ahead and tell us your story?
Sure. I'm Nikki Driscoll. So I am with STG Logistics over in Dublin. So very similar stories to both of you. I had my 25-year anniversary in March. So I was truly a baby when I started. This was my second real big girl job that I had. So came in completely green. I remember my interview, they used a lot of acronyms and words that I had no idea, but I was like, I'm just gonna go with it. So I entered in the customer service, customer service rep, I can't remember what it was called, and I really grew up within my company. So I have been there, we have been acquired 3 times since then, so our name has changed, but I always stayed there, had my paycheck coming, it's just a different name. So heavily customer service, operations, and realized that I was not a one-trick pony, because I thought, I'm made for operations. So then really was able to learn that financial aspect, managing a budget, a P&L, and then also took on a lot of the shared services that we do in the company. So the not as popular, the invoicing, the disputes, that kind of thing on top of what I do. So I have been a people leader for probably 22 years of my career there. So I've had a lot of teams, and I've loved to see just the progression and growth there, and especially of the women. Because when I look back to when I started in 1998, I mean, there just wasn't there was one VP, right? Like, I mean, woman, and everyone else was male. So it has definitely changed significantly. So I just love what I do, love my team. Yeah, it's so great to walk in somewhere and knowing that no matter what happens, you know it's gonna be crazy, that you can figure it out. But I think it's all like your team and the people that you work with.
Well, I would probably guess that your team would also say it's the leadership. Nods, yeah. Let's go with that one, right? So, well, thank you all for that introduction. When we met, a couple of us met, I don't think we were on, when we met on Teams, but just so impressive with your background in the length of time, the amount of time that you have stayed within a company, even though the name on the paycheck might have changed, your commitment and dedication. How did you get there? Where did that come from? You said this was your second big girl job. How did you land that one?
My first aha moment was a shipment that the owner of our company at the time had sold to his friend for camp gear going to Hendersonville, North Carolina. They put on a train. Guess what? Train was delayed. And I mean, I couldn't stop thinking about that load, right? And I'm saying, like, I was like on pins and needles. So I realized then, first of all, this isn't something that you really can leave all the time and never think about it. You know, it's not one of those roles, but I loved that. I loved taking, you know, chaos and putting it in order, right?
Okay.
So.
I've had a number of different roles, kind of moved through the industry across, you know, from service provider to customer and things like that, and then even within the customer side of the business, moved into different retail formats and things like that. But always kind of focusing internally on what I feel my strengths are and what I feel that I want those next challenges to be, and kind of, you know, just keeping your eye out for that next challenge. You know, finding allies within the business who can help you, you know, build your skills, build your reputation, you know, and maybe they have an eye out for that next position that you're looking for. Just being very frank and honest with people about, you know, I'm looking for this kind of role, or you know, and then, you know, things have a way of coming around to you when you voice those.
Put it out in the universe.
Yeah, put it out in the universe and believe in yourself. So
Perfect, thanks. Sarah?
As I mentioned, I've been with Bath and Body Works, name change, etc., for quite some time. I think relative to whether you've moved from organization to organization or stayed put, the element of curiosity and the drive to say, I don't want to be complacent. I want to try something new. I want to show up every day and have purpose. I didn't come here for perfect attendance. I came here to do good. And with that, I think brings opportunity. And what I find is that, you know, to your point of like concentrating on your strengths, like I've said to my now boss many times, you're busy, put me in coach. I'm here, put me in coach. And that lack of specificity to say, I'll do whatever you need, because I know that in the end, it'll teach me something, it'll introduce me to new people, and it will open new doors. And so I have always been very curious of what else is out there. I have always been very willing. And what I find, you know, different about especially a lot of people on my team now is they're like, I love what I'm doing. I want to stay in international my entire career, or I want to stay in this specific role. And I say, gosh, you're really limiting yourself. Do you realize when you move, you're going to enjoy that just as much and maybe more too? And so I just find that element of curiosity, the willingness to do anything, and like putting yourself out there, like you said.
Was your step into the industry intentional?
I do have a degree in both ops management and logistics, so I went with the purpose of logistics coming out of school. Was it intentional? Did I say when I was a little girl growing up, I wanted to go into logistics? No. I mean, I remember interviewing, same kind of thing, and linguistics, like people were like, what? It was, at that point in life, it wasn't as well known of a term. And it was like, mispronounced. And so, did I purposely go into the industry? No, but I was at Ohio State. I was taking elective courses, and one of them was like the School of Business, where you had to learn about every single major. And I looked around and I thought, you know what, I'm like the only girl here. And I was like, I can do this. And that competitive drive in me was like, you know what, why is this the case? And it was like, I found this edge of me of like, let's prove something. And so was it purposeful? Maybe. But it also is how my brain works. We're methodical, logical people, and it felt good to be able to make sense of chaos. So.
Good. Debbie, how about you? Is it intentional when you stepped into that industry?
No, and and I think 30 years ago, there wasn't really even an industry, so to speak of, or in my mind, I didn't realize that there was that industry out there to speak of. And my first job was with Roadway Express, and all my friends were like, "Oh, trucking," and but what I found was that it had a really tremendous management training program. I mean, back in the day, they used to put you in a management program for 15 weeks and things like that. And I'm like, you know what? This is what I need. I need some structure, and I need to start.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to start somewhere, right? Because I'm curious enough, and I'm going to find something that suits me. And also thinking that this first job is probably not going to be where I end. So just jump in,
right.
and and start going. My background is in international studies, a lot of geography and foreign language and things like that. And
there's a connection.
But it was I just need to start. Let's just jump in somewhere.
You're still in it.
And I'm still in it.
It's good.
Yeah.
Nikki, how about you?
Not intentional at all. So I had my first job, and I had been laid off. I loved that role. And then I was waitressing and a hostess, right? So it was so long ago, you would find the job in the newspaper and you would mail your resume in. I know this is crazy.
Circle it.
Yeah, so no. And again, mine was entry level. My intention there was, again, I was very young. I'm like, I'm going to take this job and I'm going to figure out what I want to do. I'm going to get into school. I didn't. So, it just took off from there. And a lot of it is just, it was bursting at that time. It was just, on fire. So they needed people, and I was just very blessed to be able to move through that. And I am a huge fan of education. My daughter is at DePaul in Chicago right now, but I also love that you don't have to have, a degree necessarily if you want to maybe go in entry level and work up, right? So, but no, not intentional at all. I didn't even know how things got from A to B.
Yeah, that seems to be pretty much the trend. Is it's just something you jump into and then stay, move around. So I want to go back to something you said, Sarah, about the staff that want to stay in international, and you're like, don't limit yourself. How do you embrace that as an opportunity to drive leadership, motivation for leadership within your area for other women?
Well, I think that it's very easy to think functionally, to think about, hey, I need to, put the feathers in my cap of domestic, of international, of distribution center, ops, etc. But what I try to concentrate on when I'm talking to the team is really about how you're showing up. It's really about the competencies. And if you really are thinking about driving development, and you're really thinking about your career, it's really about who you are as a leader. Because the higher you get in your career, the more people that are looking to you for direction, either functionally or for, hey, my career. And so I really try to concentrate a lot on the how are you showing up, who are you? And when you walk away from that day, what was the impression that you left on people? How did they see you as an individual? And so what I find is that whether it's a female or a male, oftentimes people just don't have the confidence to say, that's what I want to show up like. This is who I want to be. And what I've really recognized throughout my career is that I too lacked a lot of confidence at times, but I always had courage. and it was the difference. And you may not have the complete confidence, but I had the courage to show up, and I had the courage and the competitive drive to say, all right, I'm gonna make sure that I'm here for a purpose. And so again, it's the how, it's the courage, it's the inner workings of who we are as people that I think is really what drives us and can allow us to really open new doors.
Debbie, how about you? Have you had an opportunity for assisting other women in the supply chain and logistics space?
Yeah, I have, and I think in those types of conversations where somebody's like, oh, I can't go to domestic or something like that, I would focus on the transferable skills and your strengths, those kind of things that transcend your function, right? And it's like, look, you've said you're interested in leaning into this strength of yours as a teacher. You know, well, let's look for opportunities where you can use that strength. And it might not be in this department. It might be in HR. It might be in distribution or something like that, and try and get people to reorder their thinking around, you know, kind of breaking the attachment to the function, and leaning into their strengths and building those skills that are transferable. So
good. How about you have a few females on your team.
Yeah, so I would say, you know, first of all, just as far as the talent, identifying them. So my biggest struggle is always finding people leaders and enough of them, because not everyone's cut out to be a people leader. So FYI, if anyone is looking for any roles, so I always say they sing to me in the interview. You know, in your gut where you know you're looking for certain traits. But as far as with my team, so we are ever changing. We go through a lot of reorganizations and change. You know, when we recently became STG, we were no longer the door-to-door provider, we're the port-to-door provider. So, you know, changing things up, there's lots of opportunity because we are still, you know, growing and figuring out who we are. So, encouraging them. So my team, I know that I'm enjoying them for a moment, and I'm gonna help them get to where they need to. So one of the ways to give confidence is also letting them know when you're learning from them and they taught you something. So I have a very diverse team that has taught me a lot, and being able to say, like, that wasn't my best moment, like, you know, and being able to, you know, give that feedback, I think that gives them confidence. And I too relate to what you said earlier in my career. I also lack confidence, and you know, it was me looking at the women that were coming up and listening to them, and I had someone tell me, don't change who you are, and build and leverage your strengths, and don't concentrate on the stuff that you're not as good at. I mean, you're a work in progress, but leverage that. And also on my team, we barter strengths as well. So if you're not great at putting a PowerPoint presentation together, I'd rather you not spend 10 hours working on it if you can do it, right? So it's kind of money in the bank, right? And trading with each other and leveraging each other and teaching.
Good point. So we've talked about all the good stuff, you know, how you got to where you are, how long you've been there. Let's talk about the other stuff. Let's talk about what we referred to at our Women in Supply Chain and Logistics event in March, the WTF moments. Have any of those? Any juicy stuff? You can leave names out. You can leave names out or change the names to protect the innocent, but what were those moments? Or we can just go and call them obstacles or challenges.
I have a good one for this. So my very first day at Roadway Express was like January 6th. There's like 6 inches of snow on the ground, and it's still snowing. And I'm a trainee in the relay department, and one of my duties is the yard check. And you know, back in the day, you had to all of the equipment there were no real computers. All the equipment was statused with a big IBM machine and cards. So you had to be very accurate about where all the equipment was. And in the relay tower at Roadway, we're like in a tower with binoculars looking for equipment numbers, right? And you know, and I couldn't identify all the numbers on a GIF, and I'm like, well, I don't know what this one is, and the dispatcher was like, well, you better go check. And I'm like put my coat on, and he's like, yeah, be careful, see ya. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? Walking through the snow, brushing the snow off the Jif number and writing it down on my notepad and going back up. And I'm like, what have I gotten myself into?
Yeah.
And, you know, I think, I know I cried on the way home, and I was like, this is just stupid. I'm not doing this. But, you know, when you get up and go back the next day, like, I'm going to give it another try. So,
Did that happen again?
yes, many times. Yep, and you know, but in the end, the Columbus Relay was known for always having an accurate yard check and statusing the equipment accurately. So
you were part of that team.
yeah.
You had to put your boots on.
Yeah.
Pull your boots up. Put your
Yeah.
big girl panties and go.
Get out there in the yard.
Either one of you, Sarah, Nikki, something?
I mean, it depends on how juicy we want it then. I mean, the reality is that we're working in a male-dominated industry, traveling a lot, where there's a lot of social events and things that have presented themselves. And so I could tell stories about, you know, hotel situations. I could tell stories about, you know, being the half-assed navigator, rubbing my leg as I was in a car with someone. But really what the story that I will stick on is we were hosting an event. We had a lot of carriers come to town. It was the morning, the opening, and everyone is mingling. I was very young in my career, late 20s, and I had met someone and that I didn't know yet. And he looks at me and he says, "Oh, no, I'm sorry, it was a happy hour event. It was late in the day." He goes, "Oh, so you're," I'll make up the name, "Matt's wife?" I said, "I'm sorry, what?" And he says, "You're Matt's wife, right? That's why you're here?" And I said, "Actually, no, I'm here on my own accord." And that was a moment of like, I'm standing tall, because if someone thinks that the reason I'm here is because I'm a wife that tagged along, like, let me tell you, buddy.
Yeah,
And when
no.
you talk about courage versus confidence, that's where you buckle up and you find your courage, because people underestimate you. People don't see you as someone that should be standing there on your own merit. And so, yeah, there's been a lot of WTF moments, but you have to find the inner strength to say, hey, this isn't everyone, this isn't the norm, and keep walking forward.
And you did. Do you have some?
I'm with you. There's so many I'm not going to share. That's more for having a cocktail with ladies. I would say we all want a place at the table, and I think that it takes often longer for women to get that place at the table, and not meaning disparaging, to men, but it does. I think that's often because men demand what they want and women think that we have to negotiate, and I find that very interesting that we feel that way. I want this promotion, but no, I know, like I need to wait like 6 months until, so I think that, but as far as some of the WTF moments in my career that are more PG, the driver stories, because we're actually dealing with rail, intermodal, and drayage, and drivers can be funny to manage. So we had, my favorite story was at a major retailer to pick up a load, and there was a long line, and the driver stripped down to his underwear because he wanted to get a tan while he was waiting. And they called us, and this was our second largest account that we had. What do you say to that, right? So, I mean, it's a lot of, I call it driver wrangling, but I'm saying, like, if you can't laugh at it, you'd cry your eyes out. I mean, because once one thing goes wrong, it's like a sad country song. Right?
Was your role to go out and tell him to turn around so he could get the other side?
Yes, time to turn.
Yeah,
Yep.
turn around, you gotta get the other side.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm curious, we gotta set a time up for drinks. That's all I'm saying. No. It's all good. So what else do you want them to know about this role? If they're new in this industry, or if they've been in it a while and they have the desire to move into leadership, you've talked a lot about that, but what do you want them to know? I know you've talked a lot about courage and the confidence part, and that's not always natural for everybody. We, as a result of our Women in Supply Chain and Logistics in March, we had in July a workshop on emotional intelligence and developing your emotional intelligence as a way to not just advocate for yourself, but also for others. Because sometimes, and Debbie, you talked about that and how you were very encouraging to others and seeing their transferable skills.
Yeah.
That maybe they don't identify as transferable, that they could use in that movement towards something of leadership or just a different position.
Yeah, and I think it starts with being able to identify your own strengths and being very self-aware about what you're good at, what you're not good at, what makes you feel like a winner, like you can conquer the world, and what are the things that you would rather not do. But I think you also have to notice the strengths in others and be able to articulate that. I wanted to, after a meeting, I wanted to just chat with you a few minutes. I thought you did a really great job in there when you, explained the features and benefits of the, of the new carrier that we're proposing. I think this is a real strength of yours. And, in that way, kind of building their confidence and maybe getting them to look somewhere they haven't looked before, to build a new skill or something like that. And then, also being an ally for that person and finding allies for yourself. So, if I'm chatting with another senior leader and something comes up about, where I think somebody in my team or somebody in my network, right, not necessarily at the same company, might be good for, just dropping that person a line or mentioning it to my peer. And I think that being an ally and helping build people up is so important.
Yeah, good. Anything?
I would say I look back to who my mentors were, and I remember the very first one. I wanted to emulate her. I would study her, and I try to keep that in mind too for myself, that someone may be watching me that I don't even realize. I think that you should tell someone if they're your mentor, and you should make it your business to know what it is that they're aspiring to do. I mean, you can encourage them for something else and then really help them get there. And then I also think back to people that were not good leaders that I had, and try to not do those things.
I like what you said about emotional intelligence. I think that, I've mentioned the how you show up, I think to your point of allies as well. What I find is that it's about the relationships and the people you work with. What do I want to pull from this person? What do I not want to pull from this person? But what I find is that those that are most successful, they're entitled, I say this to my kids, you're entitled to all the emotions, but how you show up will define who you are as a human. And I say that about leadership as well, because you're entitled, you can close your door and drive home and cry and scream, whatever you need to do, but how you show up will define who you are as a leader. And it's those leaders that keep their calm. It's those leaders that find a path, that can take direction, can show personal empathy, can show compassion. I'm not saying that you have to be stoic and turn everything off, but when everyone else is crumbling and chaotic, do I have the emotional maturity, and do I show up with poise and be able to say to everyone, I get it, this is tough, but we're moving forward. And those are the allies that I'm seeking, and those either as leaders or as people on my team.
Perfect. Wow. We have some time for questions. Do you have any questions for anybody on the panel? Miranda?
You want me to stand up so you can
Sure.
because I'm really short.
Yeah.
I
I wasn't saying yes to you being short. I mean, yes, stand up. That's good.
First of all, thank you for being here. It's always just such a treat to have other strong women in the room that have made their way for 25 years plus in the industry, so thank you. As a leader to multiple people, a lot of men, I work in a very man-driven industry in here. We exercise emotional intelligence or we don't last, right? Because we become the WTF woman. And so balancing that, right? I feel like I'm putting emotional intelligence into the air all the time and holding on tight. I'm very passionate too, right? So it's boiling inside of me at times. And then I have a 30-minute drive home before I'm all on to mom, to wife, to get ready for the next day. How do you balance that so it's not pouring into that bucket, right? A lot of us talk about work-life balance, but that's put a little water on that fire and close the door so that you can come back to it the next day.
Good question.
I can share, I personally feel like working from home is a negative to what you're suggesting. That 30-minute drive home, I think, is imperative. I think that we all have to find a moment just to say, calm the chaos, and I just need to think. And whether that's your drive home or that's your shower, you know, you have to find that. And so we talk a lot about servant leadership. We talk about taking care of others. We want to be the best mom, the best everything. But if you don't take the moment to calm the chaos and just think, you're not going to be good at anything. And so my crucible moment was, you know, summertime. My kids are old enough to stay at this point, old enough to stay home by themselves. But every time I walk in the kitchen, a bomb has gone off. And I had been at work all day, and you couldn't unload the dishwasher. And so finally, my daughter at the time, you know, she was like 16. She looks at me and says, "Every day you walk in and yell at us." And I'm like, oh, that's not who I want to be. Like, practice what you preach, Sarah. And sometimes I think it takes those crucible moments to really recognize, like what's going to shake me out of this. And so hopefully it doesn't take a moment like that for you to find your calm the chaos, you know, and turn music on, like whatever it takes, but you need 10 minutes. You got to take it. And I know it sounds simple, but force yourself to do it.
No, I would totally agree, yeah, and that drive home is, you know, for a long period of time, I had like a 40-minute drive home, and that was just really decompression time. Turn the music up, you know, catch up with my sister or something like that, something to just, you know, enable you to like set that aside and move on, because if you don't, it will really eat you up. If you're really just grinding on this stuff all the time, that can be so frustrating, and you know, just breathe.
Just breathe.
Yeah, I agree. I think that when we did work from home during the pandemic, you didn't get that decompression time. And honestly, I think we all worked more hours because you're obsessed with it because your laptop's right there. But again, the drive home, I normally try and call my daughter because I want to hear about her life, and that is going to, you know, flip me into that. And if she doesn't answer because she's living her best life, then it is music. But I just try to be, I found myself a lot of times where I go home and I puke it up to my husband, and I'm like, I need to like not always do that. Sometimes you need it where you're like, hi, we need to talk. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I mean, like, we give enough of our time. I mean, this is not a 40-hour work week, right? So I really have been trying to be more about self-care, you know, especially with our kids are now grown, and I'm like, take care of myself. So just try and be mindful. And you have your partners at work, your peers and your team that can tell you, you probably need a day off. You're a little burned out, right? And you should have people that you can vent to and that can also tell you about yourself, right? So.
Yeah, I know, I've been working from home the past like year and a half, and like 4 months into it, I started like, you know what, this isn't working for me. I need to change it up a little bit, and I started like closing my office door at the end of the day, going in there, shutting the door, lift up the blinds, turn on the computer. Okay, I'm at work now. You know, but that little bit of change of atmosphere, that kind of helps you adjust, and then when you're done, do it walk away and
Do the repeat. Okay, go ahead.
What do you wish that the men in the room, maybe not in the room, would know?
Good question.
That's a good one. I guess what I would share is that regardless of whether you're female or you're the minority, there's this feeling of a sense of wanting to belong. And I feel like even at times there's, you know, not all men have the best confidence, right? But I would say, think with inclusive mentality. Think with empathy and compassion, and recognize individuals for who they are. Don't look at them first and make an opinion. What are they bringing to the table that, to your point of, you know, mutual skills, or not mutual, but how you play off of each other? How do they make us a better person or a better team? This individual isn't just a female. This individual is bringing a skill set, and try to really see with compassion and empathy of what is this person bringing to the table.
I think also, this is going to sound bad, but I think just be self-aware. I mean, I think you mentioned it earlier. even in 2023, you know, when we're in that big conference setting, men tend to speak first and longest, and women will politely wait, and you know, and we sometimes we really can't break out of that, but you know, women tend to be more listening. So I would say, you know, be aware of yourself and watch the body language in the room, and just kind of be aware of everybody's participation levels and how they're participating, and you know, don't be afraid to say, you know, we haven't heard from you, what's on your mind, Nikki? You know, and try and get the conversation going and create that kind of team atmosphere. So.
Yeah.
I want to piggyback on that real quick. I like what you're saying, because self-aware, because 2023, just this morning, I don't know if anyone picked up on it, but there's a panel, 2 men, 2 women. The one man, I'm not trying to, don't, like, this is a safe space I have, I'm not trying to call anybody out, but this is normal still. The one gentleman speaks to the other gentleman by name, and he says, and the ladies at the table.
Yeah.
And that's just normal. Are you self-aware to acknowledge that, wait, I have a name too?
Yeah. right.
Yeah, you know, we all picked up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say 2 things. So, I just had this moment last Friday when I often find myself thinking, would you have said to this to my VP counterpart? Because he's a man. So so often I'm like, you would never say that to them. And I just want you to be mindful, you know, of that. And then it was funny too. We had a retirement party last week. And I noted, it's just like what I do, like at the end, we had food left over, so I wanted to take it in the kitchen because second shift would eat that, right? I think it's the mom in us, right? Men, at least at my company, would never do that. They don't even think about like that, right? I mean, that's not their job, and I think that you should help with that, right? Just because I'm wired to do it, like pitch in with that.
Good point. Good question, good answers. Anything else? One more. Go ahead, Jean.
Would you, knowing that what you heard, because I heard it too, but this morning, what stopped you from saying, my name is?
Oh, you mean if they said it on the?
Right, if you recognize that and it's a panelist, what would stop you from saying, hey, I'm Jeannie, or hey, I'm Nikki, hey, I'm Sarah, to them in front of all 200 people? Would that stop you, or would you do it?
It's a great question. I can see why no one spoke up today. We were moving so fast,
Yeah.
right? Like, you don't want to be disruptive, and that's our nature. Like you said, we're negotiators, we're pleasers, we're wooers, winning others over, you know, and so you're right. I don't know that I would have spoke up, and shame on me, but you know, at least I'm walking away and acknowledging it here, and maybe that's a first step.
And I think it's fear of being viewed as hard to deal with, crazy,
Sure.
that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, those stereotypes get applied very
Yeah.
quickly, and
It's hard to unwire them.
Right.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining us in our living room chat conversation. Let's give them a round of applause. So we do have a few minutes for break. I want to remind you the next session will begin at 10 o'clock. There's water outside, and there are vendors downstairs. So if you could take a few moments to go down and check in with them, I know they would appreciate it. They're here just like all of us and would love to talk to you. So please do that and make it to your next session by 10 o'clock. Thank you.
Before you run away, it's my second one too.
I know, my hair is God's
No, that's fine. I've got it somewhere.
Hello, how are you? It's good to see you.
I know the weather, I know it was the first month. It might have been the first week. It was at the,
Yes, that I met, well, that you and I know it's been many, many years, so yes, it's funny how things change.
I retired 13 years ago
Yeah,
from BNSF. I worked